Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and we've seen messages from athletes and actors saying it's okay to seek help. I keep going, what about normal people? It's great. It's great that actresses and athletes, seem to think it's okay, because it is. It's okay if you need someone to talk to, if you need someone to help you get through a rough patch. Because look, life seems to be getting a lot more stressful these days with everything, coming at us, the pandemic, all the stuff that's in the news. I mean, every day it's something. So, seeking out someone to talk to, I don't know, especially if you've hit a rough spot, not feeling right. I don't think that should be viewed negatively. And that's why I wasn't surprised to find out that our friends over at the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers have a helpline for their members. That's why I've asked Alex Jacobi to come talk with us. She's the Assistant Director of the Member Assistance Program there with the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers. Their website, bacweb.org. Alex, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you so much for having me, Rick. I'm really, really glad to be here today.
So,
Grateful for the opportunity.
We see these messages all the time, Alex. Athletes saying, it's okay to get help, it's okay. But we don't see that coming for average, everyday working folks. So I'm happy to see your unions stepped up and said, hey, look, you know what? If you hit a rough patch, talk to somebody. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, yeah. So one of the biggest things that we can do to combat stigma is to normalize these issues. Obviously, mental health struggles, substance use issues, I mean, that's maybe more at the severe or clinical end of things, but just everyday family conflict, burnout, anxiety, financial distress, things that are just hitting us really hard and acutely now with the pandemic and political upheaval. These are issues that impact all of us. And so our department exists. It is way predated the pandemic, of course, over the last few years, but we exist to kind of be a safety net for our members that are struggling with these types of issues and don't really know where else to go, where else to turn. It's a very, very daunting healthcare system. It can even be daunting for licensed mental health professionals like myself, those that have a lot of experience navigating the system. So for individuals that are not well versed in identifying these resources, accessing these resources, we serve to bridge that gap and to kind of facilitate that process.
Yeah, now this is something beyond just having a buddy at the union to talk to. You're actually somebody who has some real training, a real professional who's going to help navigate the system and get, especially if someone needs some actual help. I mean, there's one thing having, hey, I need someone to talk to. I need to, just a vent to work through some things. There's that. But if someone really needs help, you're clearly qualified and trained to help in that way, right?
Yep, I am a licensed mental health professional. Our department is staffed by licensed mental health professionals. My colleague is a licensed mental health professional. We have a lot of training and experience, not just in clinical matters, but in that kind of niche area where clinical matters meet the union world and the labor world. And so we bring that expertise to the work that we do, to the conversations that we have with our members, which often surprises them in terms of how accessible it is and how comfortable they almost immediately feel in working with us. I think sometimes the process can seem really daunting and overwhelming, which is why they might shy away from it entirely. I talk to members all the time who we might be the first mental health professional, first therapist they've ever talked to in their entire lives. And they might have an idea of what that might look like or feel like. It might be incredibly intimidating. They might feel incredibly comfortable. We might present as, or their fear that we might present as really kind of stiff and unapproachable. And the only feedback we ever get is the exact opposite, that even just in that initial conversation that they have, that they feel immediate relief, even just from the conversation itself, without any actual implementation of treatment yet, if treatment is indicated for their particular presenting issue.
Yeah, I think of some of my big burly bricklayer friends, and they're people too. They when they've got problems, they got problems like anybody else. They've
Yep.
got that rough, tough exterior, but on the inside, they got problems like anybody else. And as I was thinking about having this conversation with you, I think back to some of those friends and some of the struggles that they've had with addiction, with relationships, with just life in general,
Yep.
and to have programs like this, which I gotta think. And I'm thinking about a friend from Philadelphia who wrote a book and really shared his life struggles. I got to think a big part of this came out of those struggles that members shared and kind of pushed for programs like yours to exist.
Yep. I'm glad to hear stories like that because I think that's a part of the work that we do, re-narrating what it means to be strong and tough. Unfortunately, kind of part of the stigma with addressing mental health. And I know that term in and of itself can be really polarizing, but just any issue that, might be considered mental illness or in the periphery of mental illness, just everyday stress, the challenges that come along with dealing with life on life's terms. None of us come out unscathed. We tend to think of that in addressing those types of issues as weak. And that's a really unfortunate stigma associated with looking at this more vulnerable human, but vulnerable part of yourself. And really, it's quite the exact opposite, that it takes an incredible and immense amount of courage to address these types of issues, to tap into the part of yourself that acknowledges that you might need help or support. We are, collectivists. We subscribe to collectivism. We can't do life alone. We're very adjacent to the philosophy of the union world, right? What we do. So to be able to kind of come forward, your friend that wrote the book, I commend that person extremely for being able to show up and do that, because that is no easy feat, and it's not a demonstration of cowardice. It takes a lot of strength to say, here's my situation, I'm confronting it. And the very act of doing that alone in and of itself for so many people is healing. Because so many people carry so much shame. Go ahead, sorry.
No, for him, he suffered from addiction, and
Yep.
and sadly, he's since passed. But I know a lot of my building trades friends. Addiction is one of the things that in the work world overall. I mean, addiction is a struggle for a lot of people, and to
Yep.
have access to someone to maybe help, especially if you're at the beginning of that struggle, so that maybe you can get the help at the beginning, so you don't have a lifetime of this. Which is why I think it's important to do this. So as you're going through this, and clearly you're not going to give me examples of this, that, but what seems to be the big struggles for folks who may be listening, going, well, I've got problems, but maybe they don't rise to the level that I need to call Alex and bother you with my problems. What's that look like?
We get it all. We are like a catch-all. So some of the major issues, as you mentioned, that impact individuals in the trades, individuals in the construction industry are, as you noted, depression, suicidality, substance use disorders, alcohol use disorders, but that is far from the only types of issues that we work with. We work with people that are confronting, just everyday kind of generalized worry, but non-clinical anxiety, to extreme severe anxiety, panic disorder, stress, burnout, grief, trauma, PTSD, issues related to perhaps non-traditional work hours, seasonal unemployment. I can't remember if I mentioned it already or not, but just general.
So you're basically just running the gamut.
Oh yeah, we run the full gamut, because we really help anyone that is struggling with anything acutely or chronically that is impacting their quality of life. It's really a service that supports individuals in being able to overcome any barriers that are impeding their ability to function in their personal lives, their professional lives, or any combination of the two.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Alex Jacobi. She's the Assistant Director of Member Assistance Program there with the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers. You want to check out their website, bacweb.org is that website. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. If you're a member of the Bricklayers Union, make sure you check out your union's resources. And this is, again, one of those things as being a member. And this is why, again, I all of my non-union friends, this is one of those reasons why you join and form unions, for programs like this to help each other, to help your coworkers, to help brothers and sisters. That old ideal of an injury to one being an injury to all, or concern of one. This is one of those concerns to help each other out. So I got to ask you, how did you get involved in? How did you get to this? Because as someone who you're clearly trained, clearly knowledgeable. How do you get to the building trades world?
Yep. I'm going to answer that question in 1 second. Really quickly, I do want to just add to what you just noted, which is something I don't think I'd mentioned earlier, that this benefit is entirely confidential. I think a lot of times people might be nervous about contacting or getting in touch with us. Hey, are you going to tell my business agent or my rep that, I'm calling, or let my employer know what's going on? We operate just like any other mental health facility or clinic. We're just in-house with the union. So we, HIPAA applies, federal laws apply, and everything that we talk about or discuss with members, unless otherwise requested and paperwork needs to be signed, but is entirely confidential. I just wanted to make sure that I...
No, I see again, there's, I assumed that, and that was my fault for, facts not in evidence, my assumption, and I'm glad you clarified that. So that's a perfect thing.
That's typically just a barrier to treatment or calling that we see sometimes. So I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. But maybe where I just went is a good segue into your previous question, or answering your previous question, which was how I got into this world. And so I think many mental health professionals maybe identify themselves as, or identify with being empaths. They're hearty and they're soulful, and that's very much me. That's kind of always been in my nature. But it's a calling for a lot of people. I know that sounds really, really, really cliche, but it was true for me. Just very much a calling. I knew I wanted to be in this field. And then without getting too much into a discussion that's maybe outside of this realm, I think when politically things started to turn over the last few years and get a little bit chaotic, I was pulled to come to DC and maybe be a little bit closer to the action. And I have always liked working with maybe a non-traditional setting. And so when I came across this opportunity, working for the union and in the labor movement is so adjacent to my personal values, what we do professionally, it was just magic.
So I get it. You're a fighter. You're somebody who wants to get in the mix, ball up the digits, throw some. I get it. Perfect for being in the labor movement and someone who out there wants to help somebody. I love it. I think it's a perfect story.
It was meant to be.
So, last line of questioning I've got for you, because, again, with this being Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm wanting to highlight the fact that there's nothing wrong with reaching out and seeking help in a moment of need, because, we all reach a point, and hopefully we don't reach a breaking point, but we all reach a point where we need someone to talk to. What's the advice for folks? I mean, I know myself. I like to think, hey, I can handle any situation. I'm a tough guy. I'm your typical alpha male. I can deal with it. But sometimes you just need somebody to confide in, someone to vent to a little bit, someone to unburden to.
Absolutely.
And I think this is part of that, right?
It's counterintuitive, right? We think that I'll just deal with this on my own. It's kind of, culturally normed in this world that folks might suffer in silence, and that will be the path to relief. Paradoxically, the opposite is true. You not only are dealing with the thing you're dealing with and the initial or primary source of your pain or suffering, but then on top of it, the shame around it, the internalization of it, just exacerbates symptoms and stress. It does nothing for relief. So just looking at or being willing to question what feels intuitively true about how we feel better in and of itself can maybe help you overcome the barrier to reaching out for help. Again, not to be redundant, but it really kind of maybe seems like it would make sense that I'm good. I'll just think my way or out of this, or not think my way out of this, right? I'll just not feel it. I'll compartmentalize it. That just exacerbates the issues. I cannot stress enough how normal and common it is to struggle acutely, chronically, just because, a lot of us have really kind of black or white thinking about mental illness or mental health, that a person is either can't get out of bed, just so severely in pain, just totally bedridden, just
sane or insane.
Or exactly, sane or insane, or they're great. There's nothing to look at. And that could not be further from the truth. So undermining your own ideas about what mental health really is. And that's why we encourage people to contact us, because we really, really demystify that for people. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that were struggling with clinical depression that didn't even know that they were struggling with clinical depression. I mean, they see themselves and are functional, they're high functioning, but they're struggling and they're suffering. So really, really kind of demystifying what it is, what mental illness is, and how to get it. We facilitate that process. And there was one other thing that I wanted to say, and I lost it.
Yeah. So then, because I'm listening to all this. So there's got to be one of those moments where you go, all of this comes together where, there's a story that you can leave us with that this is the reason. This is that moment that leave us with that story.
Yep. I'm going to do the same thing I did again a few moments ago, which is say the thing that I remembered. It came back to me, and then I'm going to answer your question.
Of course.
I'm really good at that. I don't know. It's a strength or a weakness, depending on how you look at it. So a lot of people think of the absence of mental illness as the same thing as mental health. And that couldn't be further from the truth. So we exist as a benefit to help people improve their quality of life. You don't want to just go through life without pain. You want to feel good. That's true physically, and we know that that's true emotionally and behaviorally. So we want people, even if they aren't struggling with severe mental illness, to understand that we're a space for them as well. One moment that really, really stood out to me when I first came to the union, or I shouldn't say first came to the union, maybe within my first year at the union, I was at a local leaders meeting, and a gentleman approached me who I had never seen before, I didn't have, I didn't recognize him. And he came up to me and he said, "You don't know me. We spoke about 6 months ago. That conversation completely changed my life." This was an individual who at that time needed to get into detox and ultimately into inpatient rehabilitation. And we facilitated that process and got to see the journey and aftermath of where he started to where he is. And this is still somebody I keep in touch with to this day. He's thriving, and he just, without congratulating ourselves too much, he regularly says he owes his life to
that's a great story.
So
that's a great story, and hopefully there are more folks that reach out. Alex, I appreciate you taking some time, sharing your stories, and keep up the great work. I think it's fabulous what you guys do. Good stuff.
Thank you so much, Rick. Thank you for having us on. We're so glad to be here.
Thanks so much, Alex. Alex Jacobi, she is the Assistant Director of the Member Assistance Program there at the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Crafts. If you're a member, make sure you check out the website, bacweb.org. If you're a non-member, you're not a member yet, maybe check it out and figure out how to become. This is, again, one of those reasons that I keep telling people. This is the reason you become a union member. Just a thought. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Always there, always available. Wherever you get yours, from iTunes to iHeart, Podbean to Stitcher, everywhere in between. Make sure you grab it. Quick break. Right back to the Craft.